Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the first ever FSH Live. Hell yeah. Woo! Yeah. All right. All right. All right. Beautiful. Yeah. All right. So for folks of you out there listening, we have a whole room stacked with good folk to come here and listen. Some of you guys might not be familiar, but we have every year here in good old Pennsylvania, hosted by the wonderful folks in the Ermine Folk, a great event called the Folkish Summer Hallowing. It is one of my favorite events. You guys have heard me talk all kinds of ways about it. I adore it. My kindred adores it. We've been here. This is our third year here. We love it every single time. We make great friends. I just love it. I absolutely love it. Well, this year, we were going to get my good buddy, Tom, everybody knows him, survived the Jive, over to the US of A to come give a talk and hang out. Me and Tom were gonna meet up in Philly and get a cheesesteak and do all kind of stuff and a bunch of. I'm gonna let Tom tell you guys the story, but unfortunately, it got a little screwed up. Let Tom talk about it. Before we get started, I want to do a couple announcements real quick. Guys, go over to erminefolk.com and go check it out. If you're in the East Coast of the United States, make sure to go over and check that out. If you're interested in getting involved with a heathen pagan community, this is the good stuff right here. So go check it out, get signed up, see what's going on, come to events, donate, all that kind of stuff. Speaking of heathen business, we have something that's really special that we're announcing here today. It is called Hearth Fire Radio. For the folk, by the folk. It is going to be our very own heathen podcast network. Not just podcasts, though. We're bringing cooking shows from the great Folkish Farmer. We got music content from Dan Cap of Vulcansman. We got all the heavy hitters coming together to bring guys an awesome heathen podcast network. We were working on an app. We might even have an app. It's pretty pro. So that's going to be coming Yule of this year. So you can go over, it's not set up yet, but you can go over to the website hearthfireradio.com and go get signed up so you can get the alert for whenever we go live. And like always, guys, dude, buy books. Go over to thebizarchives.com and buy books. So, Mr. Tom, how are we doing, sir?
I'm not bad, but I'm a little bit disappointed I can't be there with you all. I can hear those cheers and the good vibes out there in the woods in Pennsylvania, and I'm jealous. I wish I was there with you, but I'm fine.
Yeah. So but you know what? They can't stop us. They can't stop us, right?
They can't stop us. You can't stop the gods and those who follow them.
That's right. That is right. Our path to victory is clear as day, and there's nothing that can stand in our way. But we do get obstacles once in a while because there's some folks out there that don't, they don't like us very much. They don't, for some reason, they don't like you very much. But I want you to kind of give your side of the story and let folks listen and the folks here, because some of the folks here aren't familiar with exactly what happened. They saw your post, they saw our post. They're not really familiar with what exactly happened. So give the people your side of the story a little bit.
Sure. Well, we've been in talks, Dave and I, for about a year for me to come out to America for the Ermine Folk event. And in that time, I've been learning about Ermine Folk and all their wonderful history and the coins they mint and the incredible idols you guys have been building there. I really was looking forward to seeing them and worshiping the gods in those idols that are so appropriate for them, to welcome their synthemata, as they say in Greek, to welcome the gods into these idols that are fitting for them and covered in gold as they ought to be. God, I remember back in 2014, I was writing to the leader of my half there saying, I dreaming one day we'll have an idol covered with gold. And he didn't share my dream, but I've always dreamed of worshiping idols covered in gold, but like they used to be in the olden days. But I've been reading also. I know the Ermine Folk allied with the Norrena Society, so I've been reading Affin Runar, which Mark Puryear kindly sent me a copy of. It's a wonderful book, very interesting ideas about how to arrange altars and stalls, and the whale, as we say in Old English. It's definitely a great read. I'm sure some of you there will be buying copies since they're being sold at the event. But yes, in May, I applied for my ESTA, which is the visa waiver program that certain countries have with the United States, an agreement. So you don't have to pay $200 for a visa and go for a 7-day application. You just have a visa waiver, and you just have to give it some basic stuff saying like, some basic information. And I've been to USA many times in the last 20 years, never had a problem. And I applied for the visa waiver in May, and it was approved. But a day and a half before my flight to USA, it was revoked. And I reapplied just in case there was a problem with, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And it was immediately rejected. It usually takes 70 hours or so to get a response, but they gave it in a few minutes. So they got me on a list of no. I could have applied otherwise for a visa for $200 with the, and then if I had the visa rejected, I would have been given a reason because the embassy would tell you why. But there's no point because it takes 5 days, and I had only a day left by that time before my flight. So there was no way I was going to catch my flight. So it was a sabotage thing, because if they'd rejected the ESTA earlier, we could have tried to get a visa and then we would have got a reason. They'd had to have given a reason for why I wasn't allowed on. But because it's just a visa waiver, there's no reason given, and there's no way of finding out why it was waived. So anyone can speculate, and you can never know for sure. You can never confidently say the reason why. I feel pretty confident I know the reason why, and I guess anyone with sense out there can guess the reason why as well. It's my first time being persecuted by the American authorities, but I'm not. I'm quite familiar to this kind of behavior. I've had similar mistreatment at the hands of the British authorities, intelligence services in the past. I have never had any involvement with any terrorist activity, any kind of terrorists in my entire life. It's a complete made up bull, whatever that to say that I have. I am not a criminal. I do not have any violent history, or I've never made any threats. I've never published anything that could be construed as white supremacist. I've never been involved in any political organization of any kind. There's nothing. I have never been tried or charged with any hate speech. I have never been, there's nothing. I have squeaky clean record, but they treat me as though I'm a criminal, and it might be just because they don't like pagans. That's probably to do with it, but also specifically they don't like me. But yeah, I mean, other pagans have had similar things. I know on social media with them getting. I know my entire family, including my wife, who wasn't pagan at the time but has subsequently reverted to paganism. They removed us all from Facebook in 2021, no reason given, and from Instagram. We hadn't broken any rules. They just removed us. This year, they're doing it to a lot of other pagans. I gather at least I can think of at least 3 different pagans it's happened to this summer have been removed from Meta. So they are targeting pagans on social media. As for the real world and the American government, I expect there's something of the same sort happening, since we know that Meta is taking orders from the US Secret Service, as the Tucker Carlson leaks revealed. So yeah, a Facebook insider revealed that they were forced by the White House to diminish the views of Tucker Carlson's videos. So what other things do the White House order Facebook to do? I don't know. Probably remove pagans. And that if there is this concerted effort to persecute pagans, it would explain why I was not allowed into the country. But as I say, it's only speculation because we have no way of knowing for sure. But if I enter the US again, I might be tempted. If I try to enter the US again, I might be tempted to go straight away for the $200 visa, so that then if they do want to prevent me from coming in, they will at least have to give me the privilege of telling me that I'm a threat to the country, so that I can print it off and put it on my wall and show my grandchildren times to come.
Yeah. Well, it stinks that you can't be here, but we all know the score, right? Let's be honest here. The machine has been stepping on us for 1,000 years. They're not going to stop now. They don't like us. They will never be nice to us. And the fact that they're so terrified and so upset by a kind British gentleman coming to the United States to hang out with some good old folk up here in Pennsylvania to worship and practice. We're not people that are wielding all kinds of money and power. We're not in DC. Like, the fact that we can get a nice guy from overseas to come hang out with us so we can practice our faith, which is the only thing that we're doing, and that scares them. That really reveals their paranoia, and it really reveals their prejudice and their deep hatred of us in our faith. That's my opinion on it. Like you said, could be speculation, I guess, but I believe that's what it. What do you guys think?
They hate us for our religion. They hate us for our ethnicity. They hate us. They obviously hate us. The entire ideology is hatred against us. So that's why we need to remember the importance of prayer and faith, fidelity to the gods, because they will help us in our struggle against these oppressors.
Well, speaking of these people trying to oppress us, let's show them how they failed from bringing you here, because you were going to come here and you were going to give one of your famous talks, right?
Yeah.
But you still have that talk prepared. So we're gonna open the floor for Tom. I'm gonna mute myself. I'm gonna quit running my mouth, and we're gonna sit and we're gonna hear Tom do his speech the way that he was going to do it, as if he was here. And here are the rules. Like I said, everybody, if anybody here is on Wi-Fi, turn it off, because we are working with mountain stuff. I think we got two tomato cans with a string tied between it. I think that's what we're working with. But let's make sure we have that off. The way it's going to work, I'm going to open it up for Tom. You guys that are in the audience, after Tom's done, come up and you can we're going to do a Q&A afterwards. Like I said before, keep your questions as succinct as possible. Please, no 2- and 3-part questions. No, big oration or dissertation expositions leading up to the question, because there's probably a bunch of people. And if you got a question, you cook it up in your head right now, so we can be nice, and because we still got a lot of stuff to do today. But
how many people are there? How many people are in front of you, Dave?
I don't know. How many people are here? Ah! yeah. How many tickets we sell, Mike? Over 100. Over 100 people. Beautiful. This is the biggest one ever, right? Biggest ever. Woo!
Well,
all right, beautiful. All right, Mr. Tom, I'm gonna mute myself. I'm gonna quiet my lips for once in my life, and I'm gonna let you have the floor, and you let it roll, bro.
Thank you very much, Dave, for that introduction. I know you're all looking forward later to the bloat and to worshiping the gods. I had a bloat earlier here in my office to my little house gods, and I prayed that everyone would have a good time here, and I prayed for my family and all of our families to be protected from the people who do us harm. And I swore on my oath ring, as I always do, to remain faithful to the gods until I die. And I kept the last dregs of mead from my bloat, a toast to the Irmin folk and to all of you good people, and may you have a wonderful time here.
Hail!
Hail. Now, some of you might know of another Englishman called Jonathan Bowden, who I quite like his talks. He's a fiery man. Many have said that he died in 2012, 11 years ago, and it's said that he was gifted by the All-Father with that frenzy, that energy, and the gift of speech that the great skalds of old had. And one of his talks, he said an interesting thing. Everything's about energy. Master it, control it, and you can control the world. Now, he described himself as being technically a pagan, but he wasn't a pagan like you and I are, in the sense we adhere to the traditions of our ancestors. But he was a pagan in his general philosophy, is what he meant. And he wore the Odal rune around his neck all the time. His philosophy of energy is not to be found in exact those words in the Edic sources, but it is worth considering. And I'd like to talk about energy tonight. Pagan religions had core tenets, ancient mythologies and time-honored traditions, but they were not crystallized by text like the Abrahamic faith. Pagan heroes like Håkon Jarl and the Emperor Julian were ready to adapt their faith to meet the challenges of the day, and we should follow their example, since we stand at a crucial historical juncture. And like those men, we are practicing paganism at a time when it is threatened. Håkon Jarl understood the threat that Christianity posed to paganism. Emperor Julian understood the threat that Christianity posed to his paganism too. He'd even been a pagan. In fact, Håkon Jarl had been baptized, but that wasn't the same thing. Like Julian really was raised a Christian, unlike Håkon. So today I want to address modern and scientific perspectives on reality and their popular integration into the wider normie-verse culture, and how these can or cannot be reconciled with our beliefs. So energy is eternal, but it can be transformed and transferred even by inert matter. Particles heated acquire kinetic energy. They convert heat energy to kinetic energy. The particles vibrate. Life is an elaboration of this same principle. Life accumulates, transforms, and expends energy, and even corpses transfer energy into the soil. In this respect, what my friend Dave here has called in the past on his show the mechanurge, referring to like the phenomena of technological development as a distinct entity with its own will. And if we recognize that mechanurge concept, it's a competing system for energy accumulation and transfer. It competes with the system that we call life. So anyway, why should such a system as life exist? Why does life exist? That's one of the big questions that make people turn to religion, whatever religion they end up turning to. It's a question that concerns philosophers. Why did Odin create us at all? Why were we given Und, the spirit, or Ulf, energy, and warm flesh and good color? We need to look at this natural and universal principle of transfer, which is evident in the created world, for insights into our creators. The created world is the book of the gods. It's like the Bible is to Christians. We have the world, which we know was made by gods, unlike the Bible. Germanic folk used coins from the Romans, sometimes as jewelry, but yeah, sometimes as coins. And later they used coins from Christians and from Muslims. And they only valued the metal they were made from rather than the original currency value that was ascribed to it. So that's why they sometimes clip the coins and things. Their own economy was about breaking up valuable metal objects. Hence, a king was known as a ring breaker. He'd cut off bits of valuable silver or gold, distribute them among his people. Every Teuton was, in a sense, a regular Ron Paul. He had a gold standard economy and an impending happening, the Ragnarok. But jokes aside, any wealth you acquire on a raid, you had to give to a king. and he breaks it up and rewards his best and most loyal men. And the value is transferred in a cycle, just like the energy cycle, everything transferred. There are many examples in Indo-European prayers where valuable substances like mead or soma, that's in India, if you're not aware, soma is their like version of mead, gold or horses, they're all likened to the source of all energy in our world, the sun, in explicit terms, poetic terminology sometimes. Even the materialist Marxist theory of labor value, which holds that all value can be measured by the labor that created it, has ultimately energy as its ultimate source of value, since all human labor derives ultimately from the energy of the sun. The same principle of Germanic economics underpins the Germanic system of ritual sacrifice too. In fact, all Indo-European sacrifices. The Romans expressed it in their rituals as do ut des, I give so that you may give. There is a cycle of giving between man and God. In Völuspor, when Odin, Vili, and Ve make the first sacrifice to build the world, they are transforming energy too. And they are demonstrating for us the precise way we can participate in the eternal principle of all being with our gods. The value of the sacrifice, whether it be mead and all the hours of labor associated, a horse, etc., represents transfer of energy. And this value and energy is transferred through sacrifice back to its source, the gods. Whatever sacrifice that is, whether it's mead or a horse, money, some people, I don't know, some people actually do offer money to the gods. It's not unusual, but whatever you offer, it's always ultimately the system of value that's based on comes down to this energy and the value of the labor, which is energy. So the principle of sacrifice embodies the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below. I'm not a Hermeticist, but this maxim is very important, and it actually is a principle that is found in many religions, and like it's very quite intuitive when you worship gods. You want to emulate that which is good above, down here, or below, down up here, as the case may be, since the gods can be below too. This is found around the world in so many cultures and is also arrived at when we look at the fundamental rules that govern the universe too. The same principle of cycles is everywhere in nature. The moon goes around the earth around the sun. The solar system orbits the Milky Way, and the source of energy that moves all heavenly bodies is allegedly the Big Bang. And if that's true, then I have no doubt it wasn't the first Big Bang, nor will it be the last. Because time is cyclical too. Just as the seasons and the tides are, as are our incarnations in different lives in this middle yard. So after Ragnarok, there will be a renewal of both man and God. Energy is transferred through death and rebirth. Value is transferred through gifts and sacrifices. Everything is going around and around and around, but I haven't arrived any closer at a why. Perennialism, the philosophy, is at its base merely a sensible way of understanding the objective and universally true aspects of the divine. Of course, true Sophia Perennis, love of perennial wisdom, also requires that you stick with your tradition and not some crazy syncretic New Age mess. You have your tradition of your people. Yet this is the form of perennialism that will soon be presented to us as a global religion. It will be much more in line with the perennialism proposed by Aldous Huxley than by Julius Evola. The globalist project recognizes the value of religion to bind people together and hopes to cobble together parts of Buddhism, Christianity, Kabbalah, Islam, and Alan Watts' ideas into a vague new faith that poses no threat to the objective of a unified global human society. You've probably heard hippies and those kind of people saying trite stuff like, life is the universe experiencing itself. That phrase was actually made popular by the pseudo-Buddhist perennialist Alan Watts, who taught his Californian followers that they are not their egos, but an avatar through which the universe is looking at itself. That's what he said. And I mean, it's something that quite non-religious people will express things of that sort sometimes. And it sounds profound even to non-religious people, especially to non-religious people who are spiritual and not religious, perhaps. The Jewish Kabbalah tradition, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but holds that the universe exists because God wished to behold God. And that's not something that's mainstream Judaism. In case you're not aware, Kabbalah is like the esoteric subcurrent within Judaism. And so in this sense, it appropriates the Neoplatonic theory of emanationism to explain how their God created a void, just like our Ganunga gap, into which the universe could exist by this God emanating various aspects of himself into it. Because without emanationism, the theory of a God who is everything, creating something that is other to himself, is a metaphysical absurdity. It doesn't actually make any sense metaphysically. It became necessary. Clever Jews realized that they couldn't sustain the philosophy of their religion without borrowing from Platonism. Sanskrit has a word that's called lila, which some people translate as divine play. And it's a word which denotes all reality, including the cosmos. And some Hindus believe that everything is the lila of Shiva in his dancing form, Shiva Nataraja. I think that's how you say it. So, yeah, you've got the pseudo-Buddhist modern people, you've got Jewish esotericists, you've got Hindus, all kind of saying the same thing. And you've also got the atheistic black science man, Neil deGrasse Tyson. He said on his TV program, humans are the universe looking back at itself. So here he was able to express the same sentiment, devoid of any religious attachment whatsoever. Pure fedora atheism, but the same general statement. There's a scientist and philosopher called Bernardo Kastrup. He's a PhD in philosophy, and he studied ontology and philosophy of the mind. And he also has another PhD in computer engineering, especially he's an expert in artificial intelligence. So he's an interesting chap. He knows a fair few things. And I think that he's worth considering his recent proposed idea of analytic idealism as a model for reality, in which the very ground of existence is a sort of universal phenomenal consciousness. According to this view, matter is merely the outward appearance of the inner experience as observed from across the dissociative boundary. I hope I'm not losing you. I'll put it in his words. As experienced from the inside, that is, from the first person perspective, each living being plus the inanimate universe as a whole is a conscious entity. But as experienced from outside, that is, from an illusory second or third person perspective, our respective inner lives present themselves in the form of what we call matter or physicality. All matter is merely the name we give to what conscious inner life looks like from across its dissociative boundary. Bit of a word salad, but you can see it's expressing a similar concept. So the modern idea that life is the universe experiencing itself although trite, has philosophical merit, as well as precedence in ancient religions. People talking like this usually raises my hackles. I wouldn't blame you at all if you don't like the sound of some of the things I just said. I will intuitively sense globalist propaganda. But just because globalists are appropriating and exploiting these ideas, that doesn't mean we have to dismiss them entirely. They hope this belief can be a fundamental truth of a new world religion. But the particular uniqueness of different people, the uniqueness of the human experience diversifies the way the universe experiences itself. So if we accept that the universe is life is the universe experiencing itself, then we need to understand why do different species, different races, and even different individuals with different proclivities exist? Because they all experience the universe differently. They're all the universe experiencing itself differently. So if we really accept that principle, we must also accept the necessary particularism of religious experience through distinct religious traditions, which arose from the interaction of specific races with the divine in specific locales. Accepting the premise that the middle yard reflects some aspect of Asgard back on itself once again conforms to the Hermetic maxim, as above, so below. We don't have to be pantheists, that's people who believe everything is God, to consider that we, as the creations of the three brothers, are ourselves also some part of the creators. They gave so that we could give back. Odin fashioned man of wood, so we can fashion him out of wood and give back the sacrifice which he gave to make our world. To answer my question, why does life exist to transfer energy in cycles? Why did the gods make man only for us to complete a cycle of giving and receiving? Well, I'm sorry to agree with the globalists, but I believe it is to complete a cycle so that they can experience themselves and their creation through us. A sentiment is found in classical literature in which the gods envy us for our mortality, the hardships, the unique experience of mortal existence in this middle yard is fraught with hardships and dangers which give rise to the potential for a new category of being, higher than man, reaching close to the gods themselves, the hero. The highest expression of the divine order on earth is seen in the hero. But a god cannot be a hero in the same way as a man. The subtext of the Volsunga saga is about Odin's attempt to engineer a race of heroes of Odinic blood whose presence on earth enriches us all, but also, presumably, is of benefit to him too, or he wouldn't have done it. So just as Sigi, Volsung, Sigurd, and Sigmund are gifts to mankind, they also return to Odin and join him in Valhall, in death, so they can fight against the degenerative forces in the final war before the next cycle and the rule of Vali and Vidar. So there's your answer as to why we are. We are an expression of the divine that allows it to perceive itself, thus completing a cycle of energy, conforming with the same universal principle of cycles which governs everything, and which is evident from scientific analysis of the world. It is our privilege to participate in the same divine act of creation through right. At Bloat, the sacrificer, the Godi, is Odin making the first sacrifice to some extent. by entering sacred space and time and following his example, we become him and we enter the moment when it all began. We see the cycle in its entirety, and we are united with every ancestor who conducted these holy rites before us. Through Bloat, we are one with the governing principle of the universe. Our actions affirm and mirror the first actions of the first men and the very gods themselves. We pass energy back whence it came, and we are ready to receive divine gifts in return. Much of what I've said this evening is unlikely ever to have been uttered by a typical Germanic pagan of old. I understand that. Much of what I said is based on things that are happening now and things that have been said in recent years. But we have new forms of knowledge and new ways of being. And to honor the ancient principles of pursuing wisdom, we must apply sacred knowledge and interpretation to the profane discoveries of our modern world. Let us boldly pursue wisdom, following the example of the All-Father. Hail to those. Hail.
Hail!
That's all.
All right. Yeah. All right. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Mr. Tom. It was that was a wonderful talk. A lot of stuff to chew on. I myself have a lot of questions. I'm going to try to cook up one, but for you guys have questions? All right, let's do this because we don't have a whole lot of room, so we'll raise hands. I'll pick people. You guys can come up one by one and ask. Mr. Mark. Here. Mr. Mark Pereira.
How's it going, Tom?
Hi, Mark.
So my question for you is, you're talking about the transfer of energies, talking about the transfer of energies in life, and in the lore we have many examples of rebirths, right? Like the boar Sarimner and Thor's goats, and Goldegg gets returned 3 times. And my question is, like, when we have the Voluspa and the Ragnarok, right? After Ragnarok, there's there are gods that are said to return and ones that are not. And how do we coincide that with this concept? Because I personally believe that like all the gods would have to return because we are reborn after death. Everything is reborn after death. But for some reason in Voluspa, we're only given a short list.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something that I've actually considered a lot as well. It's something that I think theologically, some people even only vaguely aware of Norse mythology are like a little confused about what is the mortality of the gods. How are they actually mortal? And they're like, I mean, I don't need to tell you because you know the lore so well, but just for everyone to say, here, there's some conflicting things in the sources. For example, with Thor and Balder. Thor, in one version of the myth with the snake, is killed by the snake. And in another version, he kills the snake. So he kills the snake. That inconsistency to me is important because it might be that some of the deaths of the god in Ragnarok are not original. I don't know. But with Balder, where we know for sure that there is a myth of Balder being killed, and that's an original myth. But when we compare it with the Icelandic version, with like Saxo's version, or rather Saxo's account of like a battle in hell and a Hodorus riding there, like it does seem that the original myth of Balder involved a part that isn't preserved in the Icelandic sources anymore, where they went and got where Balder was retrieved, because Balder is said to, like, he's still, after he is killed by Hodor with the dart, he returns anyway. So he goes to hell and he comes back. So if we know for sure from the lore that Balder, after dying, is not dead, as a god. He comes back again. Why do we think even if Odin is killed at Ragnarok, why doesn't he come back then? Doesn't make sense in that sense. It's an inconsistency. But there's a possibility that we're missing some of the lore here, and that could explain it. But there's also, even if we're not, there is a belief that Odin somehow Odin as we know him doesn't return after Ragnarok. I still think that the gods are eternal principles. Metaphysically, it can't really be opposed, because that's what a god is. It's like an eternal divine personality. So if the sources aren't missing anything in that respect, or haven't been tampered with by Snorri, then I would say that the divine personality of Odin lives on in the form of Vali and Vidar, because it's quite normal for one god to be one god to be represented by other gods that were within it. That is seen in other Indo-European religions too. So I would say that the post Ragnarok, in that case, the post Vali or Vidar are the post Ragnarok Odin, if Odin himself doesn't come back. But the exact, I'm not sure exactly which it is, because the sources aren't clear. But to reiterate, it does seem, especially when you look at Baldur's Myth, it does seem very clear that they believed that a dead god just comes back. So, but from that, you can draw your own conclusions. I can't say any more. Well, what do you think, Mark?
I believe that I think it mentions like the Great One returning and all that stuff, and I think that is possibly a reference to Odin coming back. And I do believe that all the gods would have to come back. It has to have some sort of consistency and some sort of logic to it. And if you have like a being as low as a boar, and I mean that in metaphysical sense, right? To be able to be returned every single night, obviously gods would, So
it doesn't make sense for a divine principle to cease existing. Or it doesn't, that doesn't make any sense. So either he exists as himself and he comes back, because he goes to hell all the time anyway, right? So he can always come back, or he continues to emanate in another form as a different incarnation, may have a different name, like Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White, that kind of thing.
Right. Well, thank you, sir, and I'm glad you're enjoying the book. Sir, you had a question?
I can't hear you.
I'm up here.
So, hi, it's Allison.
Hi,
Lovely to meet you via mic. I'm going to throw this in not as a philosopher, but as a layperson who thinks. If Odin doesn't come back named as Odin, perhaps it is as a greater one, like you were saying, where he evolves upward. He moves up the upward path and becomes something greater than Odin as he was described in the sagas. The lowly boar might come back as it is, but our goal is to stride upward, to become better. And perhaps after Ragnarok, he comes back better. So it's not that he's not part of Vili and Ve, but just he is greater one than what he was.
Yeah, it does seem like it's saying that the time after Ragnarok, the world is renewed anew and it's better. The humans are better and everything's better. I like the idea of what you're saying, but I do think there's a bit of a problem with saying that Odin can be better, because it implies that he's flawed, and he's specifically called the Most High. So I don't think he can. He demonstrates for us a path of learning in the myths, doesn't he? He pursues wisdom in various forms. He pursues the mead, he pursues the runes, and he makes sacrifices and undergoes certain difficulties to obtain these things, to drink from the well, to see the runes. And so these are things that he shows to us in myth as a demonstrable path to wisdom. But the implication in the myth is that he therefore was not wise prior. There was a time when he wasn't. But that my personal belief is that myths don't exist in a time. They only take place in sacred time, which is eternal and exists at all times. Whenever you enter into sacred time through blood. So the idea of this chronology of a unwise Odin becoming wise doesn't actually make sense if you try and apply it to a profane chronology. So I think that's something that's how I interpret, because I just can't think it making sense any other way. So obviously some of you may disagree, but my opinion is that Ragnarok in that sense is. Sorry, did it?
No, there's a bunch of people in the room.
Okay, so yeah, like Odin can't ever have been anything other than he always is. He is always constantly the highest god, and he is always the most wise, and he's always the source of wisdom for us. So he these mythological narratives that tell us about his pursuit of wisdom are for our benefit, not his.
Let's hit some super chats. We'll get some more questions. Well, let's do some questions, and then we can talk. Let me do some. All right, one second. Let me hit some super chats here. We got some donators. So Joshua Phillips says, "You're the best. You're the best, Mr. Joshua Phillips." That's going to be 20 big ones for the Yerman folk. And thank you very much for your generosity, Mr. Phillips. And we have Catherine. Cresium. I'm sorry, Miss Catherine, if I'm mispronouncing your name. $5. She says, "Hail and blessed Hallowing." Hail.
Hail.
Thank you very much, Catherine. All right. Do we have any more questions like to come up? Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Tom. Dana from Wisconsin here. My husband and I were lucky enough to attend Pagan Futures and thoroughly enjoying today because it feels like a continuation of that.
Hi, Dana.
Hi there. It can be a struggle to balance, as everyone knows, maintaining the tradition of our ancestors, trying to build on that and balance that with living in this modern world. So is Pagan Futures something that you're going to be doing again in the future? Should they let us into England now? And then on that note, if you did that, would you consider adding tours of sacred sites? So when it feels like some of us, when we go to England, we're visiting family we've never met before, to be more familiar with that.
Well, I definitely there's a bit of feedback.
Yeah, let me. Hang on, I'll mute us here on this end.
So I don't know about doing another Pagan Futures. I was very happy with the results and the feedback I got from it, but it was quite a lot of work actually, and I didn't make back the time, the money that was represented the amount of months of work I put into it. I got like half a month's worth of pay for about 3 months worth of work, so it's not something I can easily do. And I wanted it to be I wanted to try and keep the prices low. I'm not really willing to charge more than what I did, because I think I just don't feel comfortable doing that. So it's difficult for me to put on another one. I probably won't unless something comes up that makes it easy. I have had people offer me wonderful spaces, like a lord, actually, an aristocrat, offered me to use his hall, but it's in the middle of nowhere, and it has to be near to an airport, because so many of the people who want to attend will be traveling from abroad, and that means it has to be in a city, and that means renting a venue and blah blah blah. It's I will try not to be too boring. I'm not ruling it out, but financially and time constraints, it's just not very easy for me to do. But maybe I will. As for the other thing, that's something I've considered as well. I would love to do tours of historical parts of England for people. I thought about putting them up, like doing them at least in Devon for tourists and selling them as like Airbnb experiences or something like that. because I know so many of the local sites, and I do that, and I have done walking tours for people locally before. So I would, if I was convinced that there was a market for it, then I would definitely do it, because there's so much to see in Britain, and I love to show people who are interested in these sites what there is to see.
All right, very good. We got another super chat here. Who do we got here? We got Tanner Anderson, $5 Canadian. That's we got. He says, "Hey Tom, great talk. Do you think there's an element of mystery to our understanding of the gods, and that it could be limited up to a certain point?"
Absolutely, there is, of course. There is always a limit, and each man has his own limits. And some people have, and women, in fact, women have certain abilities that men do not have in perceiving certain things relating to the world, the other world, the underworld, and things like that. Men have different, just as like people have different IQ, and some people can run fast, some people can lift heavy. There's varying abilities as well in pursuit of philosophy, pursuit of the divine intuition, that kind of thing. Like the ability to convene with the gods varies from man to man, and the ability to interpret sources and to read is, that's IQ based, really. But also there's always, I think, similar things, but whenever you're reading and you're choosing which part to read and you're trying to interpret a text, you're sort of like, there isn't just, your brain is not just a machine. There are sometimes like intuitions, like you go one way or you go another way. I think the gods guide people in that respect, or ancestors guide them. So these kind of variables affect to what extent people are able to perceive things, and to what extent things remain a mystery. But I think for all mankind, a huge amount of the divine will remain a mystery. We can never know for sure. That isn't just to be a cop out and to say, oh, anyone's, your ignorance is, my ignorance is as good as your learning. You should never use the mystery of the divine as an excuse not to learn. But it must be said, there will always be unknowables concerning the divine.
Beautiful. We got one more super chat. We're gonna do some more, a few more questions here. So we got a super chat from Harold Avenue. He sends, "What's that? Is that euros or is that pounds? I don't know. That's pounds. I don't know what them little wing dings are." So Harold says, "There could be visa approvers anywhere." He thought, "I hate visa approvers."
With an airplane, you can go anywhere.
All right, Mr. Tom, we got some more questions here.
Tom, first off, great to meet you. Hope you're having a great evening, as good an afternoon as we are here.
Thank you.
Talking on something you touched earlier, and specifically with Ragnarok, the European peoples have faced threats over the centuries, whether it be Mongols, whether it be Muslim invasions. The question I have for you is, especially after we have just lived probably the greatest fifth generation warfare operation with COVID, the lockdowns, social conditioning that goes on, the expansion of social media, and the shaping of human consciousness, whether it be by human hand through algorithms or through AI. I see the threat to Western civilization today as greater than there ever has been, simply because of the reach and the power that the movement behind the one world government, the globalists, have. Do you think, without sounding all apocryphal, that Ragnarok is in our immediate future as folk, as the people?
Following on from what I said previously, I kind of think that there are like, Ragnarok is not something that will exist just in time as an event, like like Christians have the birth of Jesus as a historical event by which they measure time, or we measure it too. Like we say that it's 2023 now, right? So I don't think that existed exactly in pagan times. And there is one popular theory among historians which I don't like, which is that Ragnarok represented an actual historical event towards the I can't remember. It's in the Germanic Iron Age, so it actually predates the Viking Age. So where there was a climate phenomenon, and that's what they were talking about. There was very bad crops, and the winters were very long, that kind of thing. I think that is too materialist an interpretation of the myths, and too literal. I think that yes, we are approaching a Ragnarok, but it's not. But Ragnarok is doesn't actually exist as a like a fixed thing that comes and goes in our chronology. It's something that is always present. There are always Ragnaroks, and there are always struggles that we have to overcome, and there are always cycles of decay and renewal. And Ragnarok is that on a divine scale, on a large scale. So there will be cataclysms. I do believe that there will be cataclysms, of course, but I don't think Ragnarok can only be limited to some historical event where we're literally expecting to see a fulfilled prophecy on Earth of the things that are described. Although many of the things that are described already have happened, long ago. It's been happening for a long time, like brother against brother, this kind of thing. But the axe time, the wolf time. But yeah, I hope that is not too wishy-washy and that you understand my position.
The answer. It's appreciated, sir.
No problem.
All right. All right, Mr. Keith. I'm gonna bring up my boy Keith, and then let me do this one super chat right here. So we got Obadiah Vandal for $5. Says no question, just a spot of tribute. Hails and blessings. Hail.
Hey, Tom, this is Keith. Really a pleasure to hear you talk today, so thank you for that. So my question, I was thinking about the earlier discussion that you had with Mark about the idea of the renewal or transference of divine energy, potentially, going to another form, to another god. So in Himmelioth, when we see talk about the birth of Fenrir, about how Loki is impregnated by the Ylur of Angerboda. So we kind of have that transference of essence. With the fact that there are two other monstrous, children that are birthed of this transference of essence, do you think that we're kind of able to see this propagation of this evil because it's more entropic in nature rather than just energetic? Because with the gods, we more see one figure, one essence, and they might return or it might be transferred. But with Angerboda, we see this entropic force that's almost multiplied, and we end up with 3 monstrous children where there was just one being before. What are your thoughts on that?
So if it's multiplying, it's not just entropic, is it? It would be. Well, I don't believe that it's metaphysically sensible for something greater to come from something lesser. So it can't. That in that sense, I'd say that the 3 can't be a greater thing than that which they emanated from. The lesser can only emanate from something superior to it, and there is some question about the nature of evil. Some philosophy holds that evil has no actual substance to it. It's it's a shadow, has no substance to it. It's just the absence of light. So some people in the ancient world would argue that, unlike the Christians, they'd say that there's no evil. The evil is just the distance from the gods. So that sense, but then we do have the struggle of the gods against chaos, which is not quite the same thing as evil. It's something different. It's an absence of order. Chaos is an absence, isn't it? It's not an active force. It's a lack. So yeah, I'm not sure how to answer your question really.
Speculation. It's something good to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, I had him muted and he
I just said I appreciate your speculation. It's something that I don't really have a good answer for either. So something to think about.
Sorry, I can't give a.
All right. Does anybody have any more questions? Anything? You guys ready? We're coming up on an hour here, and it's getting pretty late over in the UK, and we got some big stuff we got to do. Is everybody cool? Shut this down. Oh, yes. Yes. One more thing, Mr. Tom. We have our divination at Sumble. We do a divination at Sumble, and we offer runes. And Mr. Mike, who's the head of the Ermine Folk, would like to know what is your favorite chosen rune, because we would like to include you as if you were here.
My favorite rune has always been the elk grass rune, as we say in Old English. Elk grass, as in moose grass, you would say in America, but that's the Elgis, and to me, because in the Old English rune poem it says, unlike in the other rune poems, this rune is explicitly likened to a type of grass, which is a swamp grass which is sharp sides, and it says in the rune poem, when it severely wounds whoever grasps it. So to me, that makes this a protective rune. The three prongs coming up with the sharp blades of grass. If you grasp it, you will be harmed. So you'll see on the Survive the Dive logo, you've got an S and a T and an upside down Lagus to resemble a J, STJ. But the Algiz has always been above as a protective charm to try and so anyone who would grasp and try to do harm would be averted. That's my way of interpreting Algiz.
Wonderful. We got a couple more super chats, and then we're going to close it up here. So we got Nils Ebbison. Nils for $20. Thank you, Nils. He says, not a question here either, just a token of my appreciation for the hours upon hours I've been listening to Big Dave running his mouth, and for the great Ken of Master Rowsell. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very, very generous. And wow, dang, we got the super chats coming in now. Okay, so we got another one from Tanner. Thank you, Tanner, for 5 Canadian, 5 maple leaves. Says, metaphysics aside, shout out to the largest FSH event for Tom. What else do you want to see from the heathen community at large in the near future?
I don't know about at large, but in the UK, I want to see more temples. We got one temple in Newark, but it's quite a long way from. It's a long way from me. I've never actually been to it. I've been trying to go to it for the last 9 years, but I moved to Sweden, so I couldn't go. And then when I moved back, I had kids, and now it's like many hours to drive there. So it's not something I can easily do, and it's only a very small thing anyway. And I said to my hearth at Yule that I would try and secure for some kind of building for us to keep our idols, because one of the members of our hearth carved a wonderful, beautiful idol, a really beautiful idol, a god pole, gilt with the gold leaf of the All-Father. But it ought to be housed in a proper temple. And I would like to make a god house, at least some kind. I'd like to see more of that, and I'd like to see more events in the UK for heathens. I think that there's been a big divide because of this, there was a big festival in the UK in 2016 called the Asgardian, which I was invited to speak at, which was ran by a group called As a True UK. That was a really large pagan event with like 100 or 200 people there. That was great. And they still have it, but they became more and more like excluding people who weren't lefty and, far left, basically. And that meant that it's just not really relevant, because, there are some, I don't exclude anyone from my blokes, but Mine's a regional thing. I don't do massive events like that. But I'd like to see stuff like that happen again. And obviously, I'm a man of the right, but as long as people who attended the block are, loyal to the gods and are just obeying the rules of the block, I don't really care if they share my political beliefs. It's more about you come there, you worship the gods, and you behave properly in respect to them, and that's good enough for me. But I'd love to see that the community growing in that respect. I think a lot of people in the UK who are heathen don't even participate in any communal rituals. They only do things in their bedroom, which is, unfortunately, I don't think something that lasts. I think a lot of people who start out doing that, it peters out. They maybe last for 4 or 5 years or so, and then they don't keep going, because worship is not meant to be done just in secret, in private. That's what the Christians reduced the Icelanders to at first in 1,000 years ago. And how long did heathenism survive afterwards? They said, you can carry on doing it in private in your homes, but that wasn't good enough to sustain it. To be a real cultural force, it needs to be public, it needs to be communal. So I want to see the growth of that.
Beautiful. One more super chat here. My boy, CP Webster, his archives author. I love his picture here. It's old Robert E. Howard sipping on some beer here. We got a lot of Howard fans in the audience. So CP Webster for £5 says, "Oh, to be amongst such good folks. Hail. Great to hear, Mr. Rowsell, as always. Hail." All right. All right, Mr. Tom, thank you so much for doing this, man. I'm sorry you couldn't come out. Who knows what the holds. I'm sorry?
It's my pleasure. It really was my pleasure. I'm so the least I could do, it was so kind of Airman folk to invite me to come out there. I was so looking forward to meeting you in person, meeting everybody, and being there with you all. I'm so sorry it couldn't happen. That was not fated. It was not to be. So whatever the Norns have woven, that's the fate. I'll accept it. But this is the least I could do, to do this. And also, it's a big, as you said, a big middle finger to the ones who are trying to prevent this going ahead.
Exactly. All right. Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and everybody out there that couldn't make it. And thank you to our wonderful audience, my dear friends here at FSH. And I just want to cut loose one more big hail.
Hail.
Yeah, let's get a bigger one.
Hail.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. All right. All right. Beautiful. All right, Mr. Tom, you have a wonderful evening, and I will talk to you very soon. Everybody out there, hails and blessings to each and every one of you. Make sure to go check out Ermine Folk, man. Folkish Summer Hallowing happens every single year. You can come out if you're in the East Coast of the US of A or abroad. You can always check it out at folkishsummerhallowing.com or go to erminefolk.com to check out the Ermine Folk Odinist community. If you want to get involved with your local pagan community, you're going to love it. Great people, great stuff always going on. So go check that out. If you want to check out what's coming up, go get signed up to the heathen radio network called hearthfireradio.com. Go get signed up there. It's not up yet. It'll be coming this Yule. A lot of heavy hitters. Dan Cap, myself, lots of great people are going to be there. You guys are going to love it. It's going to be great. So go get signed up for that for when it launches in Yule. And then buy books, man. Buy books. Go to thebizarchives.com and buy books. And check out my buddies at the Imperium Press, imperiumpress.org. Lots of great. And Tom's got a book. He's got a great book out, the Spirit of Yule. So make sure you get that. I know it's not you. And Tom, I got to tell you, your boys showed up strong for this, bub. We got a guy up here in the front row. It's like 150 degrees. We're all suffering and dying, and he's got to survive the Jive hoodie on. Hey, so he let it out for you. All right, Mr. Tom, that's going to be it. Thank you so much. Thanks again, and thank you, everybody. Hails and blessings, and I'll talk to everybody next time.
Blessings to all.